Welcome back to the Journey podcast, a conversation series from Collegiate Sports Associates featuring leaders from across the intercollegiate athletics and professional sports landscapes. In this episode, CSA founder Todd Turner sits down with Big East Commissioner Val Ackerman. The two reflect on their decades-long relationship in the industry, sharing stories from Val's time as a student athlete at the University of Virginia, offering insight into her experience as the founding president of the WNBA, and discussing all of the changes going on right now in intercollegiate athletics. This episode is not to be missed. Todd, take it away.
Welcome to another episode of The Journey. It's a podcast sponsored by Collegiate Sports Associates, and we are really lucky today to have my great friend Valerie Ackerman, Commissioner of the Big East, to join us. So welcome, Val. Good to see you.
Great to see you, Todd. Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're going to have some fun, I hope, in the next 15 or 20 minutes. Maybe dig into your background a bit and let you share some of your experiences in the industry and growing up and how that has impacted you to this elevated position that you have today as the Commissioner of the Big East. So I know you were born in New Jersey and got into sports pretty early because you had some mentors in your life that were in sports. Your grandfather and father were athletic directors. Talk to me about that.
That's true, Todd. They were both at the high school level. And my earliest memories are tagging after my dad in particular, as he was going about his paces as an AD at North Burlington High School. Maybe it was a regional high school in South Jersey. And remember standing on the sideline at football games and basketball games and, absorbing his work, his relationships with everyone, with the athletes, the coaches, the parents. I mean, as you know well, as one of the best ADs ever, that's what ADs do. You're sort of dealing with everybody. And so that rubbed off on me. And I guess because varying times in my life thought maybe I'll be an AD too someday. I never did get the honor of being an athletics director, but I think I've got something close in being a commissioner. And what my dad did and what my granddad, also an AD, did before him, maybe means that I had something in my DNA to bring me to this line of work.
Well, you became a multi-sport athlete throughout your high school career. In fact, I know that you played field hockey and also ran track.
I did, and I was my small hometown also had a community pool that had a swim team that competed against other community pools in the area where I grew up in Central Jersey. So that was really my first sport.
Wow.
Being on the swim team. And to this day, I love swimming. It's one of my favorite sports. I belong to a pool, even here in New York City. You get, there are pools around. So I've kept up with swimming. But as you noted, when I went to high school, in the early years of Title IX, I would add, I had a chance to play field hockey and basketball in the winter time, and then I ran track in the spring. So I really was competing all year round, and every sport sort of provided a very different kind of experience.
You chose to go to UVA, University of Virginia. You were one of the first females to receive an athletic scholarship at Virginia. Why UVA? What attracted you to the Cavaliers?
It was kind of funny, Todd. I was sort of hung up on going to a big school in the South. I grew up in Jersey, and maybe I was tired of those Northeastern winters or something, but there was something that captivated me about going south. And I had this idea in my head about wanting to be in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Huh. I don't know what it was. Maybe I saw something on television and it just stuck with me. So the schools that I looked at were Duke, Carolina, Wake, and Virginia, UVA, were the four schools that I applied to, and happily got into all of them. They all had fledgling women's basketball programs at that time. None of them had a lot of money. A couple had no money. And I guess, Virginia ended up being a little closer to home, gave me a little money in the form of a partial scholarship. And the coach, who you know well, was Debbie Ryan, in her first year who was from my hometown. She and I went to the same high school in New Jersey. So knowing that she was there and I had this family connection with her and her family, gave me and my family a little bit of extra comfort there about this big step in my life. So it was really those factors that brought me to Charlottesville.
See, I saw that. I remember number 25 running up and down the court, blonde hair flying. You fouled a lot. I remember you got a lot of fouls.
Yeah, I wish they had 6 fouls back then.
Because, you maybe, I've done the math. We first crossed paths 48 years ago, if you can believe that.
Oh my gosh. Yep. You were 10 and I was 8 or something. Yeah, it was right. Do the math.
A lot of water over the dam since then. But, at Virginia, you did quite a lot. In addition to being one of the first females that were there playing at then was a fledgling high level. Academics was important to you. I mean, you were a 2-time academic All-America. With the current trends in college athletics today, where do you think academics fits in? And will student athletes still be student athletes in the years ahead? What's your thought about that? I know it's important to you.
Yeah, very, Todd. I know to you too. I know how deeply you care about that, and your career has reflected that. Well, it should fit in because that's what we're in the higher ed space, for one thing. And so this is where we combine athletics and academics in ways that allow us to develop the leaders of tomorrow. That's sort of the formula here. And so to have had that experience at UVA was priceless. I mean, it really sort of led to pretty much everything in my life, having had that chance to go to a great school, have a rigorous academic program, figure out how to manage my time so that I could play sports, a 2-semester sport that had a lot of time spent in practice games, travel, and still pursue my degree and follow my sort of intellectual aspirations. That was really important to me. And it should be important to anybody who plays sports in college because their playing days will come to an end. It's a fact. A few will go on and play maybe post-college in the Olympics or on a pro team. But for everybody else, it ends. And for even the elite athletes, it will end someday. So I'm a big believer in the importance of that. I do think that there is in most places, certainly schools in the Big East, a focus on academic and a sense of the importance of academics in this journey that young people have. I think the messaging is probably getting lost a bit as we talk about transfers and jumping around schools and sort of the transactional nature of college sports now at some levels in some sports. Because of that and the economics that have crept in, I think maybe academics has been pushed to the side in some places, which is too bad. And, I think it really is incumbent on the leaders, people like yourself who are still operating in this space, people like me, the athletic directors, university presidents, most of all, that have to work harder and be intentional to make sure this academic piece stays strong.
Yeah, I do worry about that. And, there are so many proposals out there that could change the relationship of the college athlete to the university, to the team, the enterprise. It's just, it's a really tough time. So you wrapped up your wonderful 4-year career as a 2-time academic All-America, three times captain of the team, and then headed off to law school at UCLA. But before you did that, how's your French? You played a little basketball in France, didn't you?
I did, and my French ain't so good.
I still say oui.
Yeah, oui. Merci. So I had a chance to take the semester abroad I never had at UVA by going and playing overseas when I graduated from Virginia. And it was an opportunity facilitated by a Virginia alum who was in turn affiliated with a club team in France who was looking for an American player. And the alum called Debbie Ryan, my coach, said, we could use a player. Do you know anybody who might want to come over? And Debbie said, as a matter of fact, I do. Called me up, and it was sort of bang, bang, let's go. It was at the end of the summer after I'd graduated. Season started sort of as soon as I got there. But it was really a great way to go to another country, to see it as, as an athlete playing on a team with all French players. In my case, I knew no French when I got there. I was on the plane, like reading the Berlitz phrase book. That was how I was trying to teach myself a few phrases. My teammates spoke a little English, but they all spoke French with each other. So I was really sort of shut out of a lot, but I did pick a lot up, and it was a wonderful experience. Frankly, wish I'd stayed longer, but had other visions about what I wanted to do with my life. And I came back, and sort of my life went on from there.
Every young person ought to have the opportunity to do something like that at some point in their learning curve.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, then it was law school. Why do you go to law school at UCLA? What was that all about?
Yeah, almost a little bit of a kind of larky thing. You may remember Sybil Todd, the wonderful Sybil Todd,
yes,
who was dean of students at UVA. She was a mentor of mine, and I was looking at law schools. I had a kind of an eclectic group that I applied to, and she was the one that said, "Hey, you might like UCLA." She knew about it a little. And I said, okay, I've got some family there. So I applied, I got in, and that's where I ended up. I mean, it was another experience in another part of the world, frankly. That was good for me as an East Coast Jersey girl to be in LA for a couple of years. I had some family there. So there was a bit of a safety net for me and my parents. And I'm glad I did it. I didn't stay, and my 3 years came and went, and I came back East. But it really was good to be out there, and I still have great affection for the school and that part of the country, and certainly I have great affection for their winters. That was when you grow up in New Jersey, and it's 75 degrees in January in Westwood. That's a nice thing to sort of experience.
I couldn't agree with you more. Then after law school, a couple of years of practicing law, and then you landed your first job in sports in the NBA office, working with Commissioner David Stern, one of the legendary figures in NBA history and lore. What was it like working in the NBA, and especially working with David Stern?
When I was hired, Todd, I actually came in through the legal department. I was hired by Gary Bettman, who was at that time general counsel of the league and is now, of course, the very accomplished commissioner of the National Hockey League. But Gary hired me. The legal department was really small. I think it was 3 lawyers. I became the 4th. I was the first woman lawyer hired by the NBA, and the office was quite small. It was 100 people when I joined. So because it was small, you could sort of, if you did a good job, the top people noticed you more quickly. You weren't sort of buried in the bureaucracy. So that's kind of what happened to me. I started out doing legal work, mostly salary cap work with the NBA team general managers. And then I started working for the deputy commissioner, Russ Granick, a longtime friend and mentor, who David assigned sort of basketball oversight. That included working on the first dream team of players that played in Barcelona representing Team USA. I got to work on that. It was amazing. And then it led to David Stern calling me into his office after I'd been there about 18 months saying, I could use some help. You're working for Russ and you're working for Gary, but I need help too. And sort of we worked out that I would become his special assistant, the commissioner. And that sort of then, gave me a front row seat to be at the elbow of one of the most important figures, in my judgment, in the history of sports in our country, certainly in the history of the game of basketball, working for David. And so it really went from there, just, being able to work for him, and the office was growing. The NBA was taking on an increasing number of new initiatives, ultimately leading to the WNBA. And I would really, that was a golden age, if there was one, in the history of the NBA. And I was happy to be part of that.
So working for him, were there one or two things that stuck with you that you sort of modeled or you learned from him about what it took to be effective?
There was a lot. I would say I for purposes of keeping this short, I would narrow them down to attention to detail. One of his favorite and frankly most annoying phrases was that micromanagement was underrated. And, you don't want your CEO micromanaging you. You want them to think strategically and big picture. But that was David. He understood seriously how details mattered. And so I've sort of carried over that creed in my work. I can't do everything, but I'm acutely aware that you can get fouled up by details. So I have a sense of when I have to jump in and just make sure I'm sort of eyeballing something more closely than you might expect a CEO to do. So that was one. He really understood the importance of relationships, Todd. I know you understand that too. And when you're in a commissioner seat, you're air traffic control. I mean, you've got everything coming through you. And he understood really and could look around the corner on how the pieces fit together and how, everything related to everything else. And then the last thing, he really was a champion before it was in vogue about social responsibility and the importance of community engagement between a team and its, wherever it was residing. And he was a champion of equity and diversity long before others figured out why that was important. He knew it was important. And the WNBA was part of that vision, frankly, the importance of women to the game of basketball. And he was our biggest fighter. And so all of those things have really stuck with me. And frankly, I think about all of those a little bit every day.
Well, those are golden thoughts, for people coming up in the industry. It's things like that stick with you and that will matter as it stuck with you. But, not only were you the first woman in the NBA office, you were the first commissioner of the WNBA, right from the NBA into the WNBA. That's several things that you were first at, and we'll hit those here in a second, but talk about that transition in the WNBA. That must have been really exciting.
Well, it was because it was a different job, but it was somewhat effortless because it was a continuation of the work that I'd been doing as, what I describe as sort of the lead women's basketball person at the league back in the early to mid 90s. As the NBA was evolving its relationship with USA Basketball, on whose board I serve, with respect to its support of the women's national team program. And we undertook a major initiative in 1995 by supporting the women's Olympic team fronted by USAB that was competing in the Atlanta Olympics. They went on a year-long tour before the games that the NBA organized and paid for, and got sponsors and networks, et cetera, to support as well. So I was a point person on that. And so when it came time and that was all a backdrop for the launch of the WNBA, we were very deliberate in using that as basically a test of sponsor, fan, media interest in high-level women's basketball. And when it became clear that the interest was there in ways that were sufficient for David and the owners, the next thing was to then, reveal to the world that, hey, now we're going to follow that up with a women's pro basketball league on the heels of the Atlanta games. And so, that was me. I just went from the national team where I was spending most of my time to the WNBA. I didn't even switch offices. I came in and, I just sort of had a different business card, but I was dealing with the same people and, obviously very different job and a lot of work in that first year to get the league off the ground. But it was an honor to be asked by David and Russ to do that. And we had a lot of people involved at the league at that time. David said to everybody, this is a priority project. Everybody's got to work on this. So I had tremendous support, and the results of the first couple of years, which were extraordinary in terms of our crowds and the buzz and everything else, I think were really, proof that we got it right. We knew we're onto something.
And look where it is today. Wow, you got to take a lot of pride in helping get that started.
Yeah, it's pretty, 30 years. Sometimes it takes a generation, but, the wait is worth it when you see what's happening.
That's for sure. Well, you've been involved in so many firsts. I'll just highlight a couple of them. You were the were the first to receive a scholarship at UVA. You were the first UVA women's basketball player to score 1,000 points. Did you know that?
At the time, I sort of knew. You sort of have a sense of who may be ahead of you, but that's true. I want to just say this was before the 3-point line too. So I was getting all my long buckets for twos.
Yes, I still remember. You got a lot of fouls. I just still remember that.
You're not going to let me forget that, are you? Okay, I got it.
So, you were also first woman to work in the NBA office. You were the first
lawyer, first woman lawyer.
First lawyer. Okay, first lawyer. First president of the WNBA.
Yeah. First
female president of USA Basketball. And now you're the first female commissioner of the Big East. The Big East, what a wonderful story that is, having experienced that myself for a few years when I was at Connecticut. The culture is unbelievable. The focus is unbelievable. And the Big East is right where it has always been, right at the top of college basketball. You got to take pride in that.
It's been a great journey, Todd, as you know, because we've stayed in touch through this. I love my league. I love the basketball centricity, if that's a word. It was sort of, a deal point for me that the league didn't sponsor football. The new version of the Big East, we sponsor 22 sports. Football is not one that we sponsor. A few schools play, but it's not through this conference.
Right.
The league's got a proud history, as you know, 45 plus years old now, tremendous basketball success. And I had great respect for Dave Gavitt, who founded the place back in 1979, who I had a chance to work with when I was coming up at the NBA. So when the opportunity presented itself, I can't lie. That wasn't lost on me either. My God, I knew Dave, and Dave founded this, and I sort of knew what he was, thinking about. And so to have the opportunity to work a shift, as I call it, I'm working my shift here with the league that he founded was added to the appeal of this opportunity when I got approached about this now 12 years ago. So it's been a great journey. As you noted earlier, it's a new day is dawning in college sports. And I think every school and every conference is going to have challenges adapting to the new way of doing things. But I do think our league's in a good position, and hopefully we can keep going, keep growing, and stay relevant as times continue to evolve.
I think with your leadership, that's almost assured. So you keep doing that good work for the Big East. You are a trailblazer. That's maybe not even strong enough word for the contributions you've made to not only collegiate sports, but to sports in our nation. And you should take great pride in that. I know you do. And in fact, I looked it up. You've been inducted into 6 Hall of Fames, including the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame and the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, as well as the GTE Academic All-America Hall of Fame. It's unbelievable. So, what are your achievements in the career path that you've had say about opportunities for women in the sports, both past, present, and especially in the future? And how has, you mentioned Title IX earlier, how has that impacted your life and where you are today?
Well, I'll answer the last question first, Todd. Title IX, I'm here because of Title IX. As you know, the law was passed in 1972. The implementation took really years to unfold. In some ways, it's still evolving. But I was an early beneficiary with my scholarship to UVA, first partial and then upgraded to full. Partial in 1977, and then a year later, I got the news it would be upgraded. So my education got paid for because of Title IX. I had an incredible education at a superb institution, and I had the experience of a lifetime being a student athlete at that place. So for me, everything goes back to that. So that's number one. Number two, you're ticking off all the places where there weren't many women or any women ahead of me. And certain things that I've done. And so and now that's changed. And so it's not lost on me that while I didn't have any women to look up to and the things that I did, I had sort of women around me who I admired greatly. And I think about, for example, the late great Pat Summitt, who was, she was one tough lady. And she was a longtime coach at Tennessee who helped build women's basketball in this country. I knew her well. I had great respect and admiration for her. She's missed by many. But she wasn't she wasn't doing what I was doing. She was coaching. I was sort of in the management track. So now to look around and see, more women, senior women in various roles in college pro, national team level, networks, brands, sort of across the board is really, gratifying. And number three, to see all the young women, around that are coming up, I do feel a sense of responsibility to them to say, here's what happened to me. You're going to have a very different set of facts. Here's some things I learned. They work for me. Maybe they'll work for you. Think about them. But at the end of the day, I tell them, you're going to forge your own trail. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned as a leader is everybody's different. I'm a different person than somebody before me, somebody after me. I'm different from you. You're different from me. We're going to do things in a different way. And you really have to be your own, you have to be true to yourself in terms of how you bring all of these learnings and your personality together to be the kind of leader that can make a difference. So I do think about that often. And again, I do feel good that so many young women are coming after me and are going to take the baton and go on and do things that are, would have been unimaginable for me and for women a year ago or 10 years ago, or certainly 40 years ago, plus when I got started in this, line of work.
Well, the women could not have had a better person running the first leg of that journey to hand off that baton. So congratulations to you, Val, for your incredible contributions to not only college sports, but to women's opportunities in our country. And we'll always be grateful for that. I want to ask one more question, and then I got some quick, surefire, one answer questions to wrap up with. If you could design a perfect model for college athletics, what would it look like?
Where I think we have to get to, Todd, is some place where academics remain critical, and the athletes are not just hired guns, okay, but they're students who are in good academic standing at their schools in pursuit of a degree. If we lose that, then college sports is over. It's something else. It's not college sports. Right. So I hope we can hold on to that. Number two, I think we need to, I want to hold on to March Madness, more or less its current form. And that may be down the list of things to worry about, but that's one of the greatest events in sports as far as I'm concerned, having been to a lot of Final Fours. So holding on to that and the magic of that and the Cinderella components of that, I think is critically important. We need a system where the NCAA has the ability to make some rules. Yeah. It's a national enterprise. It runs national competitions. Schools from all over the country compete against each other. And we need some uniformity in the operation of that enterprise. And right now, it's everything under the sun is now prone to a legal challenge. And it's no way to run a railroad. It's just no way to run a railroad. And so we need some protection there and some protection in general against all these legal challenges, which keep hitting the space, costing everybody money, and, making it very hard to do a 5-year plan. It's hard to even do a 1-year plan in this environment. And then last but not least, I do think we need to come up with a system where the athletes have the benefit. The athletes in sports that are producing significant revenue for their schools have an opportunity to share in that. And I think that's why we are where we are today, because the economics, became the system wasn't built for what the economics have brought us to.
Right.
And so we need a system where certain players in certain sports have access to a piece of the pie in ways that are certain and can be contained so that schools aren't going out of business because they're overspending and not spending on the things they should be spending as institutions of higher learning. That's just a piece of college sports. Most athletes, that's not them. They're, I would describe them as important as they are. They're more cost centers than they are sort of revenue machines. And so what we don't want is for those athletes to suffer because more and more money gets directed into the ones who are bringing certain level of prestige and brand value and revenue to their university. So finding that balance is critically important. And some things, as you know, are underway now to try to get to that. Where that leads, we're not sure. But it's a very unique system in the world. Students come from all over the world to be part of NCAA teams. We're training the U.S. Olympic team here. We're training Olympic teams from other countries. And we're in the people, make people happy business, quite honestly, because the alums who come out to support their alma maters and people in campus communities and the students themselves, get a huge kick out of what we do every day. And so holding on to this very special thing, in its, what I hope in its relatively, current form, I think is the challenge of the day. So I hope we can find a way to do that.
All the while learning and growing to be respectful and effective citizens. So quite a charge. Well, listen, this has been fascinating, but I want to end on a couple of quick questions. And right off the cuff, I want you to give me your one-word answer if you can. If you want to expand, that's okay too. But so your greatest moment in your career as a player?
It's not more. It's more than one word, but not many more. My fourth year at Virginia, we got a very good start and got as high as number 11 in the country after being the doormats of the ACC my first year. So getting as high as 11. I remember when that poll came out. That was a crowning achievement for us, given where we'd been.
Yeah, that was that was a spectacular time for basketball, both men and women in Virginia, because that was the Sampson days where the James Tim's number one. That was really, and we were all part of that, and it was so much fun. It really was. So, okay, other than basketball, what sport do you wish you could have played in college?
I don't know that I wish I could have played it, but probably the one I could have played was field hockey. I was a pretty good high school field hockey player, and I liked it, but couldn't do more than one sport at UVA, so I stuck with basketball.
Best athlete you've ever played against, coached, or worked with in a professional capacity?
Well, I've never coached. There were some great women players that I played against when I was at UVA. But I would say that I worked with sort of loosely was Michael Jordan. I mean, remember I told you I worked on the first Dream Team, and I had a chance to be, right there working with USAB and seeing this guy close up, and he was special.
And still is, by the way.
Still is, yeah.
Yeah. Greatest accomplishment in your professional career?
I would say two. The launch of the WNBA, being part of that, and being part of the relaunch of the Big East in 2013 when the old league broke up, the new league sort of came together. Nobody knew where we'd end up, and here we are today. So I would say the launch and the relaunches would be on my list.
That's pretty good. Pretty good. Best sporting event that you can attend in the world, not the NCAA Final Four. March Madness. No, not March Madness.
Todd, it's the Big East tournament, Todd.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been there. It was awesome.
I will say I was at the Masters for the first time a couple of weeks ago as a guest of a colleague, and that was kind of jaw-dropping too.
Yeah, but if you love basketball, you need to go to the Big East tournament, Madison Square Garden. There is nothing like it. It's terrific. Okay, well, since we're in New York, I'll ask you your favorite restaurant in New York City.
Bubby's, which is a comfort food mini chain here in the city. They've got a couple of branches, but there's one in my neighborhood, and I go there often for a griddle special, a couple of eggs and a pancake. All
right, we're going to have to do that next time I'm in New York, so that'd be great. And lastly, where do you like to vacation, your vacation spot of choice?
I love the Jersey Shore. My husband, Charlie, and I have a long time had a weekend house in Western New Jersey. That to me is like exhale time. It's not far from where I grew up. It's near the Delaware River. I go out on the bike, take a walk, etc. It's sort of, birds chirping and trees, sort of in the breeze. And it's very, very soothing. So I'd have to say my Jersey haunts are the ones that make me most relaxed.
So we started in Jersey. We're back in Jersey. So we'll end it there. Listen, this has been just an absolute thrill for me. 48 years ago, we crossed paths, and we've been crossing paths ever since. And I wish thank you, Val, for
Yeah.
spending time with us today, and best of luck to you and your folks in the Big East.
Thanks, Todd. It's always an honor, always a pleasure to be with you. So thanks so much for having me.